Welcome to Delivering Miracles, a podcast to teach women like you tips and strategies on how you can have a safer pregnancy so you can bring home a healthy baby. I'm your host and your high-risk pregnancy expert, Parijat Deshpande. I can't wait to chat with you. The first time that I saw This Is Us, it immediately reminded me of a friend of mine that I had met years ago because I had seen her experience through having triplets. I didn't actually know anyone who had more than twins up until that point. They were just news stories and stories that I'd heard from friends of friends of friends. And getting to see and witness her experience made actually watching that show very interesting because there are some parts of it where I was like, I know that's not how it actually goes. I have a friend who, and it brought me back to this idea of how different our family building journeys end up than how we imagine sometimes. That we set out to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many kids. But how that ends up happening sometimes takes a life of its own. And I'm so fortunate to have met her on her journey while we embarked on ours through fertility treatment and then a high-risk pregnancy because, and this is something I'll never forget, once my son was born, she was so sweet to send me a very detailed email and video on how to pump and get milk for my little guy in the Nicu. It was the most empowering, most supportive email that I had received during one of the darkest times of my life. And I feel like we're forever bonded because now our children have the same homecoming anniversary date. It's a day that we all get to celebrate. And sometimes I feel like we're just part of her family and we are just the fourth of the quads that happen to be there together. I feel like we're forever connected that way. And so I'm really excited to have her come on because I think there's a lot that's out there. There's a lot of scary stories. There's a lot of fear about having triplets or more. And I thought it would be such a wonderful idea to have my friend Jenny on to tell you about her experience of having triplets, having a high-risk pregnancy, and what that entire journey has been like. I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend Jenny Medlen. She's a writer, reader, and daydreamer living in North Carolina with her husband and 7-year-old triplets. I cannot believe they're 7 already. She's a trained journalist and editor. And Jenny finally fell in love with writing when it turned into free therapy when battling infertility. Her experiences with infertility, high-risk pregnancy, preterm labor and birth, breastfeeding, and raising triplets provide fuel for her words and work to build new, lasting connections with people walking similar paths. And that is so true for me as well. Welcome, Jenny. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you.
Oh
we
my God.
Just jumping into it, aren't we? You've already made me tear up twice.
Oh my goodness. Let's just do this. Absolutely. So let's just start with this for a second. Your triplets are 7. We've known each other that long?
Yes.
Oh
yes,
my.
Actually longer because if you consider, we knew each other before I was even pregnant.
That's true.
So probably about 8 years.
That is true. Holy cow. The power of the internet.
Exactly.
To connect people around the globe and connect each other on similar paths in some ways. So, I mean, I know you have an epic story. And I would love to, I guess, first start with the question that I think a lot of our listeners have on their mind is, were you setting out to have triplets? Is that what you wanted with your husband?
No way. And, I don't think anybody ever does that. I don't think, and if they do, they're not educated in what that means, what that entails. Because if you speak to any doctor, any medical professional, they will tell you that it's not something you want. It's not something anyone sets out to do because it is scary and it is risky.
Yeah.
So no, that wasn't our intention at all.
So you are very well counseled on, okay, we're just going to aim for 1. Maybe we might get 2, but
Right.
that's kind of what is probably the healthiest solution for you and your future children.
Exactly. Sorry,
Yeah,
this was fresh off the whole scandal, I guess, the drama with Octomom.
Octomom, yeah.
It was just a couple years removed from that. So it was still part of them. And, you know, that was an instance in which she had attempted for a multiples pregnancy, and probably more than just your average multiples of twins or triplets.
Right.
So there actually was that kind of understanding that, yes, this is something that people do, but it's not reality.
Right. So how did this all come about? Tell us about that moment when you found out you were having triplets.
We had been working with a reproductive endocrinologist, and I was going in for regular blood tests with the pregnancy to check on my HCG levels. Mm-hmm. And the levels were higher than average for a singleton pregnancy, but they were pretty average for a twin pregnancy. So our doctor had been saying, you know, since I think the second test that we had, that, you know, just heads up, be ready to hear that you're having twins. It's very possible. It's still possible that it's a singleton pregnancy, but it's looking like it's going to be twins. We were nowhere near the average HCG level for triplets or more. So that was not something that had ever once, not even once, crossed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I take that back. I did once think about it when my friend joked, "Oh, haha, maybe it's triplets."
You're like, haha, good one.
Yeah, it was literally, oh yeah, that's funny. No way. But when we had our first ultrasound at 6 weeks and 1 day, I think it was, you know, my doctor, who was my RE that I had been seeing the entire time. And, you know, anyone who goes to a reproductive endocrinologist practice, you see, just like in the OBGYN, you see the various doctors that are practicing together. But it just so happened that I was able to schedule my first ultrasound with my doctor. And so we were really comfortable and we were really excited, pretty nervous, but, you know, ready to see what was there. And she said, she started the scan and she said, "Oh, and then there's one heartbeat and there's a second heartbeat and there's a third heartbeat." And
oh my God,
the only thing that I could think of was no. And that is exactly what came out of my mouth, was no.
Try again.
And my husband said, "Just stop counting." Just stop. And I mean, thankfully, that's all that she had to count to. That's all that there was. But immediately, we both kind of went into this tailspin of, holy cow, what do we do now? I rotated from laughing, kind of wild laughter, to crying. And my husband was just in stunned silence.
I mean, what do you say at that point? There are no words to describe that shock, I bet.
Exactly. And, you know, my doctor, she's a great physician. She's a straight shooter. She's one of those people that is not going to gloss over anything. She's going to be completely upfront and honest with you. And for some people that I've talked to that also saw her clinical approach was kind of cold. But I really appreciated that. I mean, she was excited for us. She was happy for us. She wanted to help us build our family. But I wasn't at all shocked when the next words out of her mouth were, "You should consider having a reduction."
Mm-hmm. What was that like to hear?
You know, like I said, I wasn't surprised because she was very matter of fact. And she wanted to see us succeed with our family and have the best possible outcome. But I had been doing my own research, and it's not fresh in my memory right now, the numbers. But at the time, I was confident in the risk difference between a twin pregnancy and a triplet pregnancy, life-threatening complications or life-altering complications. Even
for you and the babies.
For me and the babies.
Yeah.
The risk was small enough. The difference in risk was small enough for me to be confident in a triplet pregnancy versus reducing to a twin pregnancy. And then, because with my mindset, you know, what if we reduce to a twin pregnancy and then one of those babies doesn't make it? Or what if we reduce to a twin pregnancy and both of those babies doesn't make it? And then I'm forever wondering if the one we had reduced would have made it. So, I mean, it was immediate, no, we're not doing that. because the risk of going forward with a triplet pregnancy was less risky to me than going forward with wondering what my choices would have caused.
When you were counseled about reduction, did they talk to you about what the risk of reduction would be like for you and the babies? Like, were there health risks for you to reduce versus to carry a triplet pregnancy?
If they did, I don't remember, but I was also wholly focused on the actual pregnancy. Mm-hmm. My own health. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say, but my own health was no longer so much a concern as my health for the pregnancy. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does. It becomes everything's about the babies now. Right, so what can I do for myself to help these babies grow and thrive?
Right.
Right. Oh my gosh. So when did it sink in? Like, oh my gosh, we're having 3 kids at one time.
That was weeks later that it actually sunk in. Because at first it was thinking about all of the little small bits and pieces. Like, we got into my car to leave and I thought, this car is not big enough. We're going to have to get a new car. So it immediately became, what are we going to need to change in our lives to adjust to this, and not how are our lives going to change, or how are our lives going to change with 3 kids? It was, how do we need to accommodate?
Right. Do you mind if I ask, and I know this is probably a really sensitive question, but did it ever cross your mind at all that maybe one of them wouldn't survive and that
Absolutely.
You might only have twins?
Yes.
It did?
Yes.
What
and
was
in fact
that like?
Well, it was terrifying. It was terrifying because, as opposed as I probably seemed at first, when you hear that you're going to have a baby, 2 babies, 3 babies, you immediately have hopes and dreams.
Yeah,
and
that is true.
So I was immediately terrified and immediately convinced that, or not convinced, but I knew that the probability of one of them having a problem was there, the chance that one of them having a problem was there. Mm-hmm. And my entire first trimester was actually facing that actual possibility. And when I was 7 weeks pregnant, so our first ultrasound was when I was 6 weeks pregnant. When I was 7 weeks pregnant, I had started bleeding. I think it was overnight or at night. And we ended up going into the office first thing in the morning. They did an ultrasound and they said, we could see on the ultrasound, and we could see that baby C was not the same size as the other 2. We could see that there was no heartbeat. I saw that with my own eyes. And they said, baby C has expired. It's common that 1 or more is not going to be as strong, and your body will reabsorb and it will be fine. And now you're dealing with a twin pregnancy and the risks are less severe, and, things could be great. And this could be the only problem that you have. So we went home with reality that we had lost one.
How devastating was that?
It was crushing. Because it had only been a week and it hadn't really sunk in, but it had already imprinted that I was going to have triplets.
Yes. It becomes a reality so fast, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It took less than a week. It probably took less than a second.
Yeah.
But in that week, it was already enough to crush me. And at the same time, it was a little bit of a relief thinking, wow, I have a little bit of a better chance to have a longer, healthier pregnancy.
Sure.
2 are going to have more room to grow. This could be a good thing. But at the same time, I was mourning the loss of whoever baby C would have been.
Yeah. Your head knew the realities, the statistics, the data, but your heart had 3 babies in it already.
Right. So it was the next week that I had bleeding again. I went again to my RE first thing in the morning, and they got us set up in the ultrasound room, and you could already see on the screen that they had the measurement, like the graph set up so they could record measurements for baby A, baby B, or baby C. And I actually think at that point they were still recording them as 1, 2, and 3. Actually, no, it was A, B, and C. And I saw that there's A, B, and C, and I said, it was kind of a punch in the gut.
Yeah.
I said, that I don't have triplets anymore. We lost one last week. You know that, right? And I'm sitting there like, how do you not know that? What is going on? How do you not know what happened to us last week? And the doctor that I saw that day was not my normal doctor. And he's like, oh, no, it's fine. We're just keeping it in there because that's where you started and it's standard. I mean, he probably had better words, but that was the explanation that, this is just what it is in your chart. We're keeping it. So we sit down and he starts the scan and there's baby A, there's baby B, there's baby C.
What?
And yeah, baby C. And we said, what do you mean? Baby C was smaller last week.
And there was no heartbeat.
And there was no heartbeat. It was visibly to me, an untrained person off the street. It was visibly obvious the week before that baby C was smaller. She was behind by several days. Mm-hmm. And there was no heartbeat. They tried. They moved around. They tried.
Yeah.
So we said, what is going on? Was there a fourth? You guys missed? What is this? Was it a mistake last week? And they had no explanation. They said, no, it's not a fourth. It's not a fourth. It is the third. We don't know why it looked like it did last week. We don't know why things are the way they are this week. But there are three. There are 3 heartbeats. There are 3 on track growing babies.
Oh my gosh.
And in fact, baby C had, where she was behind by several days the week before, how they measured them, she was ahead a couple of days at that one.
How do you even explain this? This is incredible.
There is no explanation.
Wow.
There's no earthly explanation.
No.
And
you guys must have gotten like 50% more gray hair in that week.
Oh, I'm sure.
Than ever in your life. I cannot imagine the ups and downs of your emotions from accepting that, okay, we lost one to now, hey, it's back and it's doing great. Wait, what?
And that was only at 8 weeks pregnant.
Oh my God. You had no idea what was to come yet.
Yeah, that was barely into the pregnancy. Unbelievable.
Oh my goodness. So jumping forward for just a second, is baby C the one that keeps you on your toes by any chance now?
We thought baby C would be. We joked about having doctors make sure that they knew who they pulled out, where that baby C was. Because we needed to know who needed zip ties around their fingers.
That's right.
My baby C is Callista.
Mm-hmm.
She is a rule follower to a T. She never strays from what she is supposed to be doing. She watches out for her brother and sister and keeps them in line. And she is by no means a troublemaker.
That is so fun. She got it out of her system early on.
Like, you must have.
I did that. Now it's time to get straight. So the rest of your pregnancy, though, I mean, I wish that this had been just the only ups and downs you'd experienced, but you had some more challenges that came up after that, right?
Yes, I bled all through my first trimester.
Oh, God. I can really empathize. That is not easy.
No, it's not. And each time it happened, after week 7 with you lost a baby, and week 8 with, oh, you gained a baby. Week 10, when I started bleeding again, it was like, oh, okay, well, now who do we have?
Right.
What's going on now? And I think week 10 is when they finally said that I had a subchorionic hematoma. Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty common. It's not unusual to have in pregnancy, especially after fertility treatment.
Exactly. So that at week 10, when I went to the hospital at that point, because then it was an ER visit because it happened at a completely inconvenient time. It wasn't something that we could just pop into the RE or something. Then it was, nothing groundbreaking happened at that visit. And it was just, oh, this is why you're bleeding and it's normal and it's probably going to keep doing it and you're fine. So between week 10 and my next scan at week 14, I bled off and on, but it wasn't as panicked as those first couple times.
Because now you know why it was happening. It wasn't a miscarriage. It was a medical condition that you know presents like this. It's still, I know from my experience, it still made my heart stop every time. But there was a moment of like, okay, we know what this is.
Yeah. And there was also a moment for me of we could be losing a baby, but, you know, after rushing in and being told, you know, different things each time and experiencing different things each time, after that 10th week, I kind of hit a resolve where, you know, at this point they can't do anything. And we know that the bleeding is caused by this. If it gets worse, I go in. If not, we're just going to assume it's this. And if we lose a baby at this point, we lose a baby at this point, and we can't change that.
Right. That makes sense. So that went on through a little bit of the second trimester, towards the beginning at least. And then did you have any moment in the pregnancy that it was like, okay, everything's going the way it's supposed to?
About 2 weeks.
Hey, 2 weeks.
I had about 2 weeks. I think I was like 16 and 17 weeks pregnant. That, you know, it was, oh, okay, this is great. It's normal. You don't have any issues. We don't see any problems. Everything's normal.
Did you get to celebrate and enjoy those 2 weeks, or was there always something in the back of your head going, wait, when's the next one coming?
No, I didn't ever have that moment or even period of release and relief. Yeah. It was always, what's next?
Yep.
Always what's next. I mean, there was joy, and I hadn't realized that something was missing from my pregnancy until we found out the sexes of the babies. And that was a monumental change in the pregnancy, that, you know, we could assign pronouns to baby A, baby B, and baby C. And suddenly these clinical titles had personal titles.
Right. It goes from an it to a he or she, which is huge.
Right. So that, I mean, that was big, and that felt good. But no, my whole pregnancy was a mess of emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I can really relate to that. There's a sense of, you know, even afterwards looking back, of wishing that I'd had more moments of happiness and release in the middle of the madness and chaos, because I felt like I missed a lot from being able to really enjoy the milestones that I was hitting.
Right.
Because there was so much anxiety and so much worry and so much fear.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally the same.
Yeah. So your little people, they came early.
Yes.
Were you prepared for them to be preterm because you were carrying triplets?
Yes and no. Yes, I had somewhat prepared. I had not allowed myself to consider it to be a possibility, though, because
who wants preemies?
Exactly. In my mind, if I focused on a goal and made it my goal and accepted that that was going to be the reality, I had power over the outcome. Mm-hmm. And so I never once allowed myself to say, you know, they're going to come early. Mm-hmm. They're going to need help. We're going to need help, going to be scary. I never once prepared myself in that way. On the other hand, I had two friends the year prior to my kids were born who had given birth at 27, 28 week points. And I stood by them and was supportive of them when they gave birth. And it was, both of them had singleton pregnancies with no complications leading up into the birth. And, you know, seeing their experiences and seeing their babies and the pictures that they had and what they had went through, that visually prepared me.
That makes a huge difference, by the way. If I can just, those of you that are listening, if you know that you're likely to deliver preterm for whatever reason, I also found looking at babies, it can be scary, so pace yourself, but knowing visually what a baby looks like at certain points of the pregnancy and what you can expect them to look like when they're born early is so helpful to manage that shock for when they come.
I actually just offered that same advice to a family member who was pregnant with twins. And I said, you know, look on YouTube. If that's the only thing that you can do to prepare yourself, look on YouTube. Start with a video that I had shared on YouTube. I said, start here and just start clicking on the related links and just kind of see what it sounds like, see what the babies look like, get used to the appearance, because the appearance of premature infant is completely different from what you expect a baby to look like.
Totally different. Isn't that true? I mean, that is so, so true right there.
And that enough can be a horrible shock.
Yes.
A horrible shock, because you go in expecting to see a baby, and for as much as they look like a baby, and for as much as when I walked in and I saw them and those were my babies.
Yes.
There were people that I knew that I loved, had never seen preemies before,
right,
who saw pictures of my babies and their reactions and their immediate verbal reaction even. I mean, because you can't stop the reaction.
Sure. It's a very visceral reaction.
Yes.
So,
it was shocking.
Yeah.
And it was hurtful.
Yeah.
But it was probably hurtful to them too, to see the difference of what prematurity looks like.
I think for a lot of people who don't know, and I know this would have been in my case as well, had I not gone through this, is you just expect a smaller version of a full-term baby. Like, okay,
right,
you look like a baby, but you're just tiny. And that's not the case at all. I mean, from what their skin looks like to what their hair looks like, what their face looks like. I mean, all of it is, and then you add on the tubes and wires and things that are part of the Nicu, and it can be very scary to see that.
Yes. Yes. So I was grateful, and I went back and I told those women, the mothers of the babies who helped me walk in and see my babies for nothing more than being my babies. I thanked them for sharing, and I thanked them for changing my experience.
Yeah.
From what it could have been.
Absolutely. It's life altering for sure. Do you know what caused your preterm delivery?
My daughter, Eleanor. I swear to you, this day, it's her personality. I joke. As 7 years removed, I can do that.
Right. Yes. That is true.
And I can even joke with her and little Miss, what are we doing next? What's next? What are we doing after this? I can say, you got the party started. You couldn't wait.
Right.
You're the reason that we had that early introduction. But in all seriousness, technically it was declared premature. You're going to have to help me with this. PPROM?
Mm-hmm. Preterm premature rupture of membranes.
Yes, thank you. I knew there was one of the P's that I was missing. It was baby A.
For those of you listening who aren't familiar, it basically means your water breaks before you go into labor and before you hit full term.
Right. And so for us, it was baby A. Her membranes had ruptured. Baby A closest to the cervix. The other two were still, their membranes were intact and everything was fine with their sacs. But for whatever reason, I was on bed rest at the time. So I was lucky enough to remove myself from that blame. It wasn't me jumping around and having a dance party. For whatever reason, her membranes ruptured and they couldn't keep everybody in that, we had to give birth. No.
So once she was out, they were like, okay, everybody's coming out.
Yeah. I had a C-section.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if giving birth vaginally to just one baby was even an option. If it was never one that was posed to me.
Mm. Do you ever wish that you had that conversation?
I don't know. I've never thought about it. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, I bet it happened so fast. There wasn't an opportunity to think about it at the time.
Yeah, it was very fast. It went from sitting in triage with the hospitalist saying, oh, we don't know if you're in labor or not, to by chance hearing my OB's voice out in the hallway and saying, bring her in here and let her check on me, to, okay, we have 2 ORs scheduled. We're ready to go.
Mm. Were you ready?
And no. Yeah. Mentally, no. At home, no. Yeah. No, we were in no way ready for it, but we had no choice.
Right. What can you do? So, it was time.
Exactly. I mean, when it's time to go, it's time to go.
Yeah. So at what point in the pregnancy did you deliver your triplets?
I was 28 weeks and 1 day pregnant when they were born.
That's very, very early.
It is. But I had gone into the hospital, into labor and delivery at 25 weeks, 3 days pregnant, and was told that day that I was giving birth that night and spent the next 5 days in the hospital fighting to stay pregnant. So when my actual membranes ruptured and the OR was booked and we were told it's going to happen right now, there was almost a sense of relief that, okay, it's 28 weeks and that's better than 25 and 3. You know, we were able to get, yes, we were able to get a little bit further. Yes. And, you know, they're going to have challenges, but, you know, we've been working hard for 3 weeks and, you know, we're just going to hope for the best.
Absolutely. And those, I mean, the 3 weeks, it literally, I'm not exaggerating. For those of you that are listening, those 3 weeks, it is completely different what happens to children within a few days and especially in a few weeks, difference within the pregnancy. So you bought them not just 3 weeks, but you bought them an entirely different prognosis for their life by being able to deliver a 28+1.
Yes. So that's why when they said at 28 weeks, the difference of hearing you're going to give birth at 28 weeks was a completely different experience than I had
yes.
3 weeks prior.
Yes.
So it was almost, okay, we can do this.
Yes, absolutely. Made it to 28 weeks. We can do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was it like when you saw them for the first time in the NICU?
It was scary. I dealt with a whole lot of guilt, so I felt terrible.
Yeah.
Seeing them so small and helpless.
Yeah.
Almost to the point where I almost felt like I didn't deserve to be in there with them.
I know that feeling well. It's this whole body experience of seeing these babies before they're ready for the world.
Right. And I spent the morning leading up to their birth because I went into the hospital at 5:30 and didn't actually give birth until 9 because we had lucked out actually with our timing and were able to grab onto 2 shifts of preemie experts.
Fabulous.
So we had 2 neonatologists, mm-hmm. one coming off a shift and one coming on a shift that were both able to stay. We had extra respiratory therapists. We had the NICU charge nurse.
Mm-hmm.
She was also there. So we had 1 neonatologist for 2 babies, or each baby had a neonatologist.
Awesome.
And then the third had the NICU charge nurse. So 3, each baby had their own expert.
Yeah. They were in really good hands and very well taken care of because they had such personal attention.
Exactly. And that was huge.
Yes.
But in those hours that we spent waiting to get everybody lined up, I apologize to everybody that I saw. Mm. I'm sorry you have a hard morning.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I couldn't keep them in.
Yeah. It's amazing how you had the preemies. Your heart was the one that's out there now trying to survive, but you're apologizing to other people who are more than happy to take care of these little babies. But that's what guilt does, right?
Yeah. So when I walked into I didn't walk into the NICU. Come on. I was wheeled in on a bed because the bottom half of my body was still numb. So when I rolled into the NICU, you see all these people rushing around and working hard and getting into formation. And I felt like an outsider. I was an outsider.
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt like I did not belong there, that I had done my job and, go back to recovery because we have it from here. And yes, that is a thing. And yes, that is important. But at the same time, what do you do when you're a mother and you can't do anything else?
Yeah. It's heart-shattering. When were you able to hold them for the first time?
When they were able to be held, it was still a matter of safety for them.
Yep.
So their care team said that they could be held for an hour each day at that point. So with 3 babies and 2 parents, and each baby only allowed to be held for 1 hour each day, my husband held our daughter Eleanor first, and I held my son Toby on day 4 was when they were able to be held.
That's amazing.
It is great. But I held 2 of my babies on day 4. I didn't get to hold the third until day 5. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about this actually this morning, that 4-day period can be so short when thinking about other things. Like a 4-day vacation flies by.
Yes.
Waiting to hold somebody you waited your entire life to meet. For 4 days, it was excruciating. Absolutely. And I don't know how I spent that time. I have very little memories of how I spent the first 4 days of their life. I know I passed the time, obviously, but it passed.
Yeah. You go into survival mode, right? Like you make this normal. I know that's what happened to me because I had to wait a long time to hold my son too. And it just like, you have to make it normal. Like it's normal to not hold your child for days and weeks. And I'm not going to expect that because it's the only way to cope with it.
And externally, that was what was going on because we had family members lamenting about not being able to hold the babies or us not being able to hold the babies or just the babies not being able to be held. And, logic had to take over, and being my children's advocate had to take over.
Absolutely.
And even though I didn't want to wait, I had to convince other people that it was perfectly normal, that it was okay. And this is just how it has to be. And we're fine. And on the inside, it was horrible.
Absolutely.
It was horrible.
Absolutely. And then the moment it happens,
there's a picture of me having the ugliest cry. The first time I held my first baby, it got progressively easier, which I feel like it shouldn't have, because it should have been a first experience for each baby. Yeah. But it did get progressively easier. It got progressively more natural. Yeah. The first time I held the first one, though, it was like a wall of fake strength came crumbling down.
Yeah. It's a moment you can't forget. It's etched in your body. I can still feel my son sitting in the palm of my hand the first time I held him. It's just, you can't forget that. It is so deeply etched in your memory and in your body physically, a moment like that.
Yes, absolutely. Same here.
Yeah. So now you're 7 years out. Your babies came home. They have been thriving for 7 years. If you look back now on this epic journey that we only got a small little sample of today, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
Expectations don't mean anything. That it's almost damaging to set up expectations for yourself. Goals are different, and hopes and dreams are different. But I think expectations for what the future is going to be, it's something that I try to avoid. And when people are asking for my advice, which I'm not in the business of giving, that is the one thing that I try to tactfully say, that, don't have your heart set on one thing that you believe is going to be true.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's a very powerful and very sage lesson to share with our listeners, because it really, I think, encapsulates your entire experience perfectly and really hits home what every single one of our listeners is going through. That there's been this image, this vision, this idea of what it should be like, and it's not happening that way. I love it. I love it. And for those of you that are listening and have heard Jenny's story, you will find the strength to get through whatever life throws at you. You will find it and you will get through it. It may not look the way that you wanted. It may not look the way that you ever had wished for, or maybe it will, but you will find the strength because it is in you. Jenny, what are your final words of hope for women who are listening in right now who are pregnant with triplets or more and are hearing your story and are going through it right now? What are your final words of hope for them?
It's hard. It's not easy, but it is always worth it.
Oh, I just got goosebumps. I love it. Oh my goodness. You are amazing. And I know you're not going to say this, so I'm going to say this for you. You are an incredible mother, and you have been such an inspiration to me on how to get through everything that we went through soon after you went through it. So thank you so much for being so open with your story, for being here today and sharing parts of it with our listeners. And where can people find you if they want to reach out after they've listened to this episode?
You can find my whole long story at actualjenny.com. I wrote through the entire process, and my writing kind of dwindled off as toddlers became more exhausting than newborns somehow. I'm not sure how that happened, but it did. So actualjenny.com has the whole long emotional journey of what we went through. And then I keep up with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at actualjenny. And I'm always available to share and to hear and to talk to people and to be there and connect with people who are going through something similar, because, I mean, let's face it, we all go through something similar.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And all these links are going to be in the show notes when this episode is published, so you all can access the blog and reach out to Jenny easily by clicking on the links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Jenny, for this. This was incredible. And I so appreciate you being here on Delivering Miracles and sharing your story. And I just thank you again for being you and your friendship through all of it.
Thank you for being there through all of it, because you were there for me just as much. What we have shared together is something that you can't replace it. You can't make it up. There's nothing quite like it. And thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I'm like almost in tears here. You guys have no idea. This wonderful human has been such a tremendous source of inspiration and hope and support for me. And I hope that when you listen to her story now, you can gather from her the tremendous amount of strength and hope that comes with her story too, that you can grasp onto no matter what you're going through. Because when you are faced with things, especially on the family building journey, I mean, life in general throws all kinds of stuff at you. But when there's a baby involved or 3 babies involved, it's a game changer. And tapping into that strength, that hope, that inspiration, that motivation, and feeling supported by people around you to help you get through it is so, so key. I mean, it's beyond key. It's critical. It's as important as breathing and having oxygen to take into your lungs. So if you're going through something right now, infertility, a high-risk pregnancy, baby in the NICU, I want you to know that the strength is in you. You will get through this. It may not look like you wanted it to look. It may not look like how you thought it should look, but that strength is in you to get through this. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And if you enjoyed today's episode, I would love it if you can head over to iTunes and leave a review and subscribe to Delivering Miracles, so more women who are going through infertility, a high-risk pregnancy, have a baby in the NICU, can tune in to receive inspiration and tips and motivation and stories of hope like Jenny's to help you get through the challenges you're facing right now. And if you are experiencing pregnancy complications right now and you're worried about your baby and you're anxious about delivering early and you're scared about what's going to happen and you know that you're super, super stressed out, I'm here for you. Reach out at parijatdeshpande.com, check out the free webinar, shoot me an email, and let's talk about how I can help you get through this really difficult time, because it's not that complicated. It's hard to get through this, but with the right tools, you can and you will. I believe it with my whole heart. Also, I would love to stay in touch, so follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at parijatdesh. That's PARIJATDESH. It's during the most trying of times that we figure out exactly what we're made of. And what I know for a fact is you are stronger than you will ever believe. And when you need it, that strength will come out. That doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be crushing on some days, but you do have the strength to get through this. I really, truly believe that. And I hope you do too. Take it one day one step at a time. You can do this.